Hey up guys, it's Rory from Enlighten the Shadows. Today is episode 6. Last week we had episode 5, which was with Martin Dormley, a former member of European Parliament, and him and I had a great chat just unpacking what is toxic masculinity. And we really feel that in this day and age that men and boys need restoring, men and boys need improvements of the way that society deems them, treats them. So yeah, we had a great chat, and I'd love for you guys to just check that out when you get time. It'll come up on your screen right now. Also, today's episode 6, so I don't want you to click on that right now because this is why you're here. Today is gonna be popping off. I'm telling you, like I might have said this every week, but I really mean it this week. This is gonna be one of my just favorites. I'm anticipating so much. I've just been looking around, and for many weeks now, looking around at guests in a different plethora of society. And I know of Mo. Him and I very briefly spoke on Twitter a couple of times on my personal account. I took it down, so I don't know if he remembers me, but Mo Timbo is my guest today for episode 6. This man has got up to stuff. I'm telling you, just stay with us, spend another hour and just listening and lean into this conversation, because I really believe that this man not only has the credibility from his experience of his past, but he is now transformed and restored in his life. And I believe he's got a lot of wisdom to share with us, with some stuff that right now is just kicking off. And I feel we need clarity, not just men, but women and children too. So yeah, thank you so much, Mo. How you doing, mate? It's great to have you here today.
Thank you very much for having me, sir. Honor. I'm excited as well. You know, I'm doing good, and just really happy to be here and to kind of just help and share some thoughts as well.
Yeah, man. It's good, something to go look forward to, because I'm a Leeds fan, you're an Arsenal fan. I don't mind the Gooners, so but we've had a bit of a
you had to mention
week.
Arsenal. I just said everything was going good, and you had to mention Arsenal. Yeah, I'm an Arsenal fan. You know what? I actually used to be a Liverpool fan. Yeah. My dad was a hardcore Liverpool fan, and then one day I just decided, forget them, I'm going to support Arsenal. And now I'm just like, I don't make a choice, bro.
I don't mind them, bro. They play some nice football ever since we were young, because I believe you're a year or so older than me. But yeah, man, it's been a tough week, so we can just have a laugh on here today, and hope that the end of the season works out good for us, bro. But yeah, man. So as I was alluding to the guests, they probably go, who is this cat? Who's this guy? They've probably got a bit of a curious nature now, because I did big it up a bit, and it rightfully is, because if you check your name out in the news, and your story is just absolutely just madness, bro. So what I want to ask you, basically, for our viewers to just have a bit more of an insight, can you just take us to Southeast London, 20 years or so ago? You're growing up, you're a youth on the streets. Just unpack that for us and just share your...
Yeah, so what I normally do is just kind of give a bit of background on, my upbringing, where I was raised. So I grew up in Southeast London, a place called Walworth Road, which is quite near to Peckham. So most people have heard of Peckham, because of Only Fools and Horses, and it's not quite like that anymore. But in that area, it was just really rough, lots of gangs. Gang culture was heavy in those days, in the time that I was around, lots of drug dealers, and just kind of grew up in that environment. But when I first grew up as a young child, I would describe myself as a good child. I was very quiet, didn't really want to get into any trouble. I was really good in school, primary school, top classes for every single subject, maths, English, everything. I was just always that sort of child. And part of the reason for that is my father was a lawyer. And so my father was very books orientated. Everything was education. I mean, just the fact that he was an academic and he was African together, the two combined, that means everything was just about books 24/7, education. So for me, that was pretty much my primary school life was all about education, staying away from the wrong people. But what happened as I grew older, especially the transition from primary school to secondary school, my father and my mum separated.
Okay.
And growing up, they'd always he'd moved out of the house, and been in the house and come back. But it was around year 6 where it dawned on me, okay, you know what, Dad's leaving the house, he's gone. And he's gone now, he's got a new house. And I remember just processing this as a as a year 6 and processing this. And I remember asking my mum one day saying, where's Dad? He hasn't been here for about a week now, 2 weeks. He's ringing me, but he's not in the house. And so it was at that point that Mum told me that, look, Dad has moved on, he's got a new family and everything else now.
Oh, wow.
And I remember it was at that moment that, this good boy, everything that was inside of me that was good just went confused for a second.
Yeah, man.
Because
did he like tell you? Did he like lay it out to you? Did he inform you like any reasons? So, like when my dad left, the relationship broke down massively for a few decades. Like, but respect to him, like he sat us all down as kids and explained his perspective per se. And so it was clear because I was about year 4, but you had a few more years on me, so you had a bit more understanding. Did he like lay out? Was it just as you say, your mum just?
No, there was no conversation about it. So again, to his credit, he would always stay in contact. So he didn't disappear. He wasn't one of those fathers that disappeared completely, never knew where he was. He lived down the road, but he didn't communicate. He didn't say, okay, this is what's happening. It was almost like it was a taboo subject. So I was afraid to ask the question. I was afraid to ask, why are you not here? And he was afraid to kind of, it was almost just like an authority relationship. So you're my dad, I'm your son, wherever you say goes. But in my head, I've got all of these questions. And so I think the reality was the fact that those questions were not answered. That's when resentment started brewing up inside of me, because I'm thinking, hold on, I'm not stupid. I've realized you're not here. Yeah, you're calling me. I don't understand what the situation is. And the problem is, if you don't explain to your children why this separation is happening, they begin to think it's because of them. They begin to think, oh, right, you're leaving me. Not knowing, no, in life, sometimes husband and wife, they don't see eye to eye. But if you don't explain that, then it's almost, okay, you're not just leaving mum, you're leaving me. You don't care about me. And so I think I grew up with that feeling of, oh, hold on, this is about me. Now I'm older, I realize, no, actually, it wasn't about me. It was about mum and dad. I've got a wife as well. We argue, we fall out, we make up and everything. So I understand that reality of life. But at that point, because he didn't address that issue, it became personal. And so because it became personal, rejection kicks in, anger kicks in, confusion kicks in. And so at the age of going into secondary school, a lot of that anger and rejection was subtly there. But what I started realizing is that as a young boy, I was always looking up to my dad as a role model. And one of my sayings in life is that it takes a man and a woman to make a child. So it takes a man and a woman to raise a child. And so without having my dad there, now that person who was raising me up, who was being my role model, that person that was inspiring me, I've lost that person now. And so I'm starting to ask myself, okay, where am I going to find out how to be a man? Dad was the person in the house that I saw the way he walked, I saw the way he talked, I saw the way he would always be reading books. So that's what I was. But then when that was gone, that physical role model, that physical example disappeared, I had to ask myself, okay, who am I going to model my life after? And what happened, because of the area that I was in, the environment that I was in, all you simply do as a young child is you look at the nearest people you can see, the nearest men you can see. And I think people need to understand this as well, because as much as we try and remove, male role models or try to say it's not as important, a young boy is naturally going to look at another man because he's like, you look like me, you sound like me, so can I learn from you? And so all that happened to me is the men around me became my example. I started looking at them, and they were like the local drug dealers, the local gang members, and the same way I would look up to my father as a role model, they started to replace him. Now, it wasn't because they came into my life saying, we are going to replace him. It was because there was something missing in me that I went looking for in them. And so I thought, wow, this is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to have respect. I want to be like you guys. And so what that did is that just led me down a dark road, in the sense of I wanted to just be like them. So whatever they would do, I would do. And the difficulty for me growing up is I still had this good boy mindset. So I was still a good boy. So I didn't really want to smoke weed. I didn't really want to rob people. I didn't really want to do the things that they were doing. but I just love being around these men. And so growing up, that was pretty much my lifestyle. I was just surrounded by these sort of
that must have been quite tricky for you, because what it sounds like is you had a solid upbringing up till like 10 years old per se, and then your dad, as you described really well about he's left, and then you've got like your conscience playing on you, because he's instilled good morals in you. You really sense like right from wrong, and the first 7 years of your life established most of your brain capacity, science proves. So it's just like, were you really struggling, like in your conscious mind, like were you like battling it out, like, oh man, should I be doing this, should I be here? Like, was it something like you really struggled and you're aware of? Because some people just like, they don't really think, they just jump into things and they're like, yeah man, yeah, let's do this. But it's what it sounds like. I don't know if I'm right, but
no, you're spot on. I think it made it tough. It made it very hard for me, because in my brain, I knew, and in my mind, I knew what was right and wrong. So I was very different to most of my friends on the streets, and they would notice that. They would notice that my thought process was completely different. I would see things completely different to the way they saw it. And so what it did is, number one, it made it hard for me, because, to be involved on the streets and in, so-called gangs and crime, you have to be fully sold out to it. You have to believe in this. Now, I didn't necessarily believe in that. I didn't believe robbing people was the way forward. I didn't believe in my heart of hearts that, getting involved in fights was the right way. So you're involved in something that you don't necessarily believe in. I'm just simply doing it because I want to be with the men. I want to be where the boys are. I enjoy the laughter. I enjoy the joking. I enjoy the cussing each other, mocking each other, the banter. But my brain is saying, no, this isn't what you should be doing. And so because of that, I think I would say the first few years, year 7, 8, and 9, and this is very important for parents to understand, because if anything, I think it made it hard for me, because it's almost like I pulled myself back from being too bad. And so because I pulled myself back from being too bad, I got picked on. I got bullied. I got people, other gang members, trying to rob me. And so that put me in a more dangerous place, because I wasn't really certified. I wasn't really, my heart wasn't in it. And on the streets, people can tell when your heart's not really in it.
Wow.
And so my heart wasn't in it at all. My brain just knew this isn't the right way forward. And so, I realized, I wasn't that bad. I wasn't that gangster. I'd get robbed, I'd get bullied. And then for me, that's when it became a bigger problem. So now you've gone from, okay, I'm a good boy, to, I'm hanging around with the wrong crowd. I'm flirting with crime. Yeah. And now because I'm flirting with crime, I'm getting hurt. And because I'm getting hurt, this becomes the bigger problem, because now I have to tell myself, okay, you can't do this. You've got to really fully give yourself to crime and give yourself to the gangs, or just get out and go and get an education and stay away. And I think for me, that realization happened around the age of 13, 14 years old.
It sounds like a demilitarized zone. Like, in warfare, if you're in that demilitarized zone, you may think it's safe, but it's not, because you're not aligned to either side. You're either aligned to one or the other. And, what I want to ask you as well is that you mentioned, your mindset, your sort of like, you're in and ahhing, you had your reasons to do it and not to do it. Can you like maybe explain to our viewers what is probably the main reasons? And it might be a stereotype, but from your experience, what you saw the other lads, why do you think they wanted to do these kind of things, like, get in a gang, doing the drugs, robbing people? Why do you think they wanted to do that?
I think, again, looking at, now I process it, I think looking at the difference of having my father around just for those, just till 10 years old, just that in itself was enough. Because my friends, many of my friends that I hang around with had no dad around. From the moment they were born, they didn't even know who their dad was. And so there were certain morals, certain things that were not put inside of them. There were certain things that were just inside of me from growing up. I grew up in a religious home, in the sense of all my family were Muslims. So I grew up from a Muslim background. So my name, Mo, the full name's actually Muhammad. And so, I'd be hit all the time with like Islamic doctrines and how to behave and how not to behave and what to do and what not to do. And so I was constantly morally aware of what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And I think for me, that was I think that upbringing was one of the things that just kind of solidified certain morals inside of me. But also, I was good at. I think there's a strong link between education, so how people are performing in education. I was in all the top sets, so not to say I had a better brain than them, but in a way, yeah, I was smarter than some of the guys I was with. Some of the guys I was with were all in bottom sets of class, no education. They didn't rationalize things. They didn't think things through. You know, if they're going to go rob someone, they're just going to do it. Whereas because I kind of had a little bit of an education as well, not only the religious upbringing, I would rationalize, if we do this, that means this is going to happen. And if that happens, then and that's the worst place to be in on the streets.
Cause and effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a sense of consequence, because, you know, some of the lads that even today that, you know, are involved with gang life, they probably just haven't been nurtured enough to know cause and effect.
Yes, absolutely.
They probably know it in their head, but then there's head knowledge and heart knowledge, I call it. Your head is like, oh yeah, I know it in my head, but actually your heart knowledge is, I'll follow through with it because I know that isn't right and this is right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. And I think for me, that was what was happening is the voices the voices of morality were louder at one point in my life than, you know, the voices of doing the wrong things and crime. That was quite subdued. But the hard thing with life is that life will throw some events at you, some circumstances at you that will all of a sudden reduce the volume of that rational voice. And all of a sudden, this anger and the crime and everything else, that sounds louder. And so for me, that's what happened. And, you know, there was moments in my life where I realized, okay, you know what? I'm going to have to stop listening to this good voice. I'm going to have to stop listening to this good boy, because this isn't getting me anywhere. And one of them was when I got robbed. I remember I got robbed at the age of I think I was in year 7. And I was walking back from school. I went to a school called Kingsdale, which was like, you know, the Kingsdale is like notorious. If you ask anyone in South London, they'll tell you Kingsdale is one of the worst schools. And the reason for it is it was in an area where you had boys from Peckham, Brixton, all different locations, and from rival gangs in that school. And so I remember one day I was walking back from school and I'm with my friends, and the friends I was with were, again, all my friends in the top set. They were all in the top classes, you know, we're all the nerds. We're coming back from school. I got my bag on, but yet there's a little bit of me, because of the area that I'm from, that thinks he's a bit of a gangster as well. Yeah. So I saw these gangster boys walking towards me, and I'm looking at them and they're looking at me, and I'm just, again, thinking this is a game. And so they look at me, what are you looking at? And I'm just like, I'm looking at you. And then I realized things escalated very quickly. It's
like the white chavs and scallywags wear Burberry where I'm from, in Lincolnshire. Yeah. You look at them wrong way, and it's like, what you're looking at, and you're like, well, you, like, I'm not, nothing really. And it's like, but that's an open door to get banged out.
Absolutely. And that's what happened, you know. So I saw them come in. Back then, I think these guys would wear like their tracksuit bottoms down to their knees, and they have another tracksuit bottom on top, and they'd just be walking. And so I saw them coming, and I knew these were the bad boys. And I just opened my mouth like, I think I said something like, you can't touch me, I got older cousins. And then, you know, that was the worst thing you could ever say if you can't back it up at that point. And they robbed me. They took, I think back then, you know, it was like, you know, these little gel pens as well. They took all no,
not the gel pens, bro.
You know, I was furious. And they took things off me. And then they said, what, do you want it back? And I said, yeah. And then one of them slapped me in the face. And I remember that at that moment, I'm in year 7 and my friends are next to me. And it was almost at that point where I said, you know what? It's either I don't answer back anytime someone tries to rob me or anytime someone tries to do something to me, or I've got to lose this side of me. I've got to try and lose this side, because I'm going to get in problems here. And, you know, what I'm saying and trying to act a bit macho, trying to act a bit gangster isn't kind of matching up to my personality. So I've got to change my personality now to either suit the streets or to just stay away from it. And so I chose to kind of build this anger and violence and crime inside of me.
Right, it sounds like the mafia, bro. You can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, literally. And it does feel like that, you know. Yeah. And I think a lot of the times people will look at areas like South London and they will say things like, you know, why are all these young kids in crime? Why are they doing this? And there are many reasons. I understand, you know, there is quote unquote poverty, there is, you know, fatherless generation. But I'll tell you, a lot of it is peer pressure. A lot of it is guys saying, you know what, if I'm not on that side, I'm going to be on the victim side. If I'm not the gang member, if I'm not the person initiating, I'm the person that's going to get robbed on the bus. I'm the person that's going to get told to remove himself from that seat. I'm that person that's going to get patted down every time. And so you kind of are forced to make a choice, you know, which one do I want to be in certain environments? And for me, growing up in, you know, they say we actually say it's like survival of the fittest in that sort of area. And so a lot of people get drawn into crime and violence and gangs in that area specifically, not because they really wanted to, but it's almost like, you know, which one do I want to be? You know, do I want to be the one getting robbed, or do I want to be the one doing the robbing?
Yeah. Oh,
and crazy, so for me, I think that was the lure, that was the pull.
Got you. So you said around year 9, so that's about 13-ish, 14 years old. There was that big step, that transition where you're like, oh man, like, you know, I'm just gonna have to be part of this now. You know, I want to hear about that. So like, were there a lot of lads who were, you know, 16, 17, 18, 19-ish that were leading these gangs? Or was it just totally all secondary school kids? Or, you know, was there a hierarchy or anything like that?
Yeah, a massive hierarchy, absolutely. And I think that was the appeal to it, of it as well. So, you know, I'd be 13, 14 years old and I'd look up and I'd see the 20-year-old and the 21-year-olds, and they look like they're leading this. And then you had, you know, the younger Peckham boys who were 17 and 16-year-olds. And then you had the 50. So it was almost like there was a clear path to promotion. And again, with the way I rationalize and think things through, I'm like, maybe I can make it to the top. Maybe I can kind of get there. And so in order to get anywhere, or to get to a position or a higher position, you begin to look at the example of those people that are in that position. So if I want to be one of the main guys, then guess what? I've got to do what the main guys do. And so what I started doing is I just looked at the way they were behaving, the older guys, and I said, okay, if I want to get to your place of respect, your place of power, your place of you know, money, then I'm going to do what you do. So that's one of the reasons why I started smoking weed at the age of in year 9. And it was simply not because I had any appeal to smoke. I didn't really want it. I hated the smell of smoke. I hated this, but simply those that were ahead of me were doing that. So, okay, if I'm going to be one of those, I've got to be seen with some weed or a spliff. I've got to be seen with that. And so eventually it just became a case of, okay, whatever they do, I'm going to do. And, you know, then it started off from there, kind of associating yourself as with your age group as a Peckham boy. You know, I wasn't really a Peckham boy because I didn't live in Peckham. I lived in Wharf Road. But the school that I went to, everyone from Wharf Road and Peckham kind of joined together. They were in the same group. And so, you know, we just kind of went to school together and we said, yeah, we're the Peckham boys. And what made it easier for me is that one of my older cousins, he was 17 or 18 years old. He was an established member of the Peckham boy crew. So his name was Pacer. So I would use his name everywhere. Yeah, man, that's my cousin Pacer. That's my cousin Pacer. But because I was saying that, there was an expectation on me now. So, okay, if you're saying he's your older cousin, we know what he's about, then you've got to, what you've got to say. And so I just found myself a lot of the time just wrestling with identity, wrestling with who I was, wrestling with who I want to be. And again, a lot of these things are things that, especially for men, that your father's got to put into you. These are things that another man's got to put into you and say to you, hey, listen, your identity is not in that. Your identity is not in being this person or trying to please these crowd. It's knowing who you are, you know, being confident in the fact that you're in top grades for all these different subjects. And so that's where I think I was on a search for my identity. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And so I just started doing all different things. You know, it started off, like I said, smoking weed. And so once you start smoking weed, you say, all right, I've got to start selling weed. So some of the older guys in my area were selling cannabis. And so I remember asking them, look, can I make some sales for you? And again, if you notice, because I know we talk a lot about, you know, child exploitation and grooming. But one of the things people don't notice or recognize, especially in the hood, in those certain areas, is that it's not necessarily an older person coming to groom you. It's you, because of things that are missing inside of you, it's you pulling towards them. I found myself a lot of the time. I don't remember any time where somebody just picked me up and said, okay, I want you to start working for me. I remember me putting myself in those positions. And yes, people exploited that. People exploited the positions that I put myself in, but I wanted to be around you. I wanted to be in the gangs. I wanted, because of what was lacking in me, I wanted to be around you. And so I remember, you know, selling some weed. My friend would have a customer, he'd ring me, said, go sell that weed. And, you know, just all of that. And then that started escalating into, okay, you know, you're smoking weed, you're selling weed, start hanging around with the gangs, start really getting involved. And so what we used to do, I would say from year 9 to year 11, it consisted of smoking weed, selling weed, robbing. So we started getting heavily involved in robbing mobile phones. There was a big kind of movement of, you know, mobile phones being robbed, you know, Nokia 3310s and all them.
That snake.
All them were snakes and all of that were. So that was a big thing. That was, I mean, we used to do this thing where if we saw someone on the phone, we'd grab the phone, run as fast as we can. You know, we'd go on the bus to an area in West End of London called Trocadero, would stand outside there. Anyone who we saw would rob their phones of them. And so that was pretty much my lifestyle from the age of year 9 to year 11.
Did you skip school at all?
No.
No.
So again, I was in school throughout. I never got suspended once. In fact, I got suspended on the last day.
You're clever, man. You know the system.
And that's why I got into most trouble, I think, because I was always thinking about this. I was always, and one of the other reasons why I think I was like that, because although my dad wasn't in the house, he was always a voice still. He would always ring me. Have you studied? Have you done this? And so just that voice was enough to just keep me a little bit in check. Whereas some of my friends never had that voice. So they would go full out. They would go all out, do whatever. But I was the kind of person where I rationalized too much. And so I was in school, I got GCSEs, I got an A star in my maths, you know. So I did very good. I got all my English, my science and history and everything else while selling weed, while smoking weed, whilst robbing people's mobile phones and all of that type of stuff.
Man, you was on it. No messing around. Were you in charge of the spreadsheet for all the profits made?
I think, again, that's what people did like about me. You know, the older guys that I was with, I think they realized that. In fact, the way it went first is with the older guys, most of them tried to deter me away. Right. And again, this is what I mean about the myth sometimes of grooming. They used to turn me away from them. Say, stop hanging around with us. Go home, go read your book. Because they recognized and they realized that I was different to them.
Right.
And so a lot of them didn't actually like seeing me. I remember there was one guy, every time I used to kind of hang around, he used to try and kick me. He was older than me and he used to kick me, go home. And I used to think, what's wrong with this guy? He used to get me angry, like really personal. Like this guy's he's making me look like an idiot in front of everyone. But I realized that it was literally, he was saying, this isn't for you. You know, you're smarter than this. You're getting good grades. And why are you out here when I saw you at the assembly, giving a speech in the assembly, and the next minute you're out here with us, you know? And so they just used to just send me home. But again, the more they did, the more I wanted to be with them, because I thought, oh man, these guys really care about me. You know, this is the love and attention I'm looking for. And so, I got through secondary school, but all the while, there were still crazy things happening. And I think that's important for parents, because a lot of parents will only gauge their children or judge their children based on academic results. Okay. So their only understanding of whether their child is doing good is whether their child has their GCSEs or have done their coursework, not knowing your child could be sniffing cocaine at that point, not knowing your child could be being exploited sexually at that age, not knowing all different types of madness that could be going on, but simply because they're doing well at school. And so I was doing very well at school, but at the same time, I was getting.
It was in the shadows, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in there, man.
Yeah, we enlighten them today, brother.
We need to enlighten them, bro.
Oh, shoot.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
So, I've read part of your story like online. I was just like, oh my days, this is mad. So, I know, like because we're the similar age. Like we're talking about like Nokias and mobile phones started to become a thing as of like year 7-ish, and right at the start of like 2000, and you know, and the drugs, and you know, because like in Lincolnshire, resin, like hash, like draw, was
Yes, yeah,
more
yeah,
used
yeah.
than like, you know, like pure form like weed.
Yes, yes.
So I know all that stuff, but in terms of like knives,
Mm.
like what happened? Like, where did they come from? Like, I remember like pockets, like Swiss Army pocket knives. And that, you know, when you're a
Yeah,
youth, you're like, oh yeah, and they're cool, but never like thought, oh yeah, use one of these bad boys. And I don't know,
yes.
when I was a teenager, I was like, the people use these, you know, you use five
Absolutely, yeah.
knuckle shuffles. You don't,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
or they, you know, it'd be like the thing that really used to wind me up when they would prey on people like 4 or 5 on one. That used
Yeah,
to
yeah,
really,
yeah,
I used to hate that. But that was
yeah.
usually the kind of like tribalistic gang, you know, young lads looking for purpose getting up to.
Yes.
So like, where did you notice like knives increase in terms of their circulation and use and that?
Yeah, I think it was when people moved away from, fist and fighting, because when I grew up, so again, when I was on the streets, it was early 2000, let's say that around that time. And around that time, you'd hear, okay, this person is great at fighting, this person's great at punching, this person's great at knocking out someone else. And so you'd back away. But what started happening, I think some people realize, hey, listen, I'm not here for fighting. If you wanna start trouble with me, I'm not gonna fight you, because there were some people that could fight and there were some people that couldn't fight. And I think it was that realization that, okay, not everyone's a good fighter. That's when weapons started getting involved. That's when people started rushing, when you say 5 or 6 people come for someone. We used to call that rushing. Oh, that person got rushed, 5 people ganged up on one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was the fact that people started losing confidence in physical fighting. And so in order to get an edge over the person, knives started coming in. And so once you realize, okay, that person's got a knife, and that gang member holds a knife, then what begins to happen is, it's almost like word begins to spread within the area. Okay, this person's got a knife, I've got to carry a knife. And it becomes like Chinese whispers. But I think really what happened is just that people realized that, with fighting, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. And the person that was losing didn't want to be the loser. So that's when I started seeing weapons get in. Because growing up as a young kid, I used to hear, if you use weapons, you will win.
Yeah, yeah, same here. Like,
Yeah, that's what I used to
I
hear.
don't like to use this
Absolutely.
word, but yeah, you're a pussy hole. That's what you're known as.
Yeah, exactly. That's what used to happen all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
But I think eventually people realize, no, actually, it's worse me losing a fight. So if I might as well start getting a weapon involved, I might as well start using weapons. And I think that's when it started happening, was, when people couldn't just take a beating. It was a case of, okay, I'm not going to lose this fight. And so you would be respected for using a weapon in a fight rather than losing a fight. And so then people thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to use a weapon. I'm going to use a weapon.
Yeah.
And that was a big culture shift. Whereas before, even if you lost a fight and it was 1-on-1, hey, you lost a fight. It is what it is. I remember, I think I had a fight in primary school. I beat up one guy. The next day I got beat up. And it just, that was it. You just moved on and you just carried on. But I think around 2000, there was a shift. And I believe the shift was because of what we were seeing in terms of the movie culture. So, like the real, at that point, that's when we started seeing music videos in a different way. That's when we started hearing things. We started having access to what was happening in America much more. And so we started saying, okay, why in America, this person got shot up. What? They got shot. They didn't fight. They got And so as we started getting more access to what was happening in America, we started realizing, okay, why are we fighting for? I'm a go draw for a tool as well. Whereas we didn't have access to guns as easily as they did in America. The next best thing was, okay, let's grab a knife. Let's grab this weapon. Let's do this. And I think that's when people started realizing, because I remember my friend saying, hey, man, I just heard this rapper say that it's the skinny guys that run the streets. And so basically what he was saying is, it's not the guys with all the big muscles and the strength who can fight. It's the skinny guy that can quickly draw for a weapon and stab someone or shoot someone. Okay. They're the ones that run the streets. And so it was a rapper called Jules Santana, who was like from Dipset back in the days. He used to say that. And so again, that's when the culture and the mindset started changing. That, okay, you know what? Even if I can't fight, I can still be a gangster. Even if I don't know how to wrestle with someone, I can still be a gangster, because I can stab you before anything happens. And I think that stigma was removed, and that's when the knife culture and the violent culture started exploding.
Yeah, man. That's so insightful, because I've been asking that for years. I'm like, yo, where did all this knife obsession come from? But yeah, I now I'm seeing it like it's almost like a substitute for, you know, the 9mm, because like, you know,
Yeah.
even if America took away the Second Amendment right, there's millions of guns in circulation. They wouldn't be able to stop it. So it'd be probably a worse thing to you know, stop.
And there was a big shift. You have to remember, in the late 90s and early 2000s, there's a big shift in what we thought was acceptable on TV.
There was one there.
A big shift. It was almost like overnight.
Even like womanizing and like, you know, drugs. It was all like glorified. And you see it come on MTV Base, wasn't it? And,
yes, that's the one.
Kiss.
What
the other ones? Yeah, man. We used to have them on Sky, and then I saw a couple randomly came across a couple of songs, me and my wife, and we went, "Oh, this was a tune back then." And then you look at some of the videos, you're like, that was where the fall happened.
Absolutely, and I think again, people need to realize that, because at the end of the day, us as humans, we respond on what we see. And so if you're constantly seeing and hearing violence, it becomes part of you. It becomes part of the way you behave. It becomes part of the way you respond. And I remember at that time, that's when the Sky network really started blowing up. Everybody had Sky Digital in the house. We could see, you know, before that, you only had channel 1 to 5. So, you know, it'll be EastEnders, Coronation Street, Fresh Prince on channel 2, Simpsons, you know. But when Sky Digital kicked off, that's when everyone started saying, "Oh, I can watch this movie. I can see what this gangster's doing. Oh, look what that's happening." And then the internet started exploding as well. So now you can go and see it here. And I think all of that escalated things much quicker. People became more enlightened. There you are.
Yeah.
Become more enlightened of what they can do, not just for good, but for evil as well.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. Oh, man. So did it start to intensify even more when you left school? Like, did you go to college or?
Yeah, so I feel always, and I'm very mindful of this with my son now as well, is that there's transitions in education are so important. So from primary school to secondary school, there was a major shift in the way I process life. And it was almost because I knew, oh, I'm in big boy school now, I'm in secondary school. And then from secondary school to college, again, massive transition. That point there, from secondary school to college, is where that voice that was keeping me back died. That's where he said, you know what, I'm not interested anymore. I've got my GCSEs. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't scared of my dad's voice anymore. I wasn't scared. It was almost like now I said, okay, let's really go for this. And so that's when I started carrying my own knife. And really started getting involved in gangs, started hanging around with the boys a lot more. Whereas before in secondary school, I kind of hang around to about 9, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Then I'll go home and do my homework, you know. Whereas at this point, that summer of secondary school to college, it was over. You know, I wouldn't go home for days. My mum would ring me, "Where are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm out with the boys, I'm chilling." And whereas before, I would be scared to even do that. I would never have dreamt of staying out all night. And I'd stay out on the streets all night, I'd be there. And so it was almost like I was building myself up now, because I realized not only was I changing in age, I was changing physically as well. So I'm getting bigger now. So mum's hits are not hurting anymore. Mum's claps around the head are not working. Dad shouting over the phone isn't cutting it anymore. I'm realizing, him saying, "Yeah, I'll be there in 2 hours," doesn't scare me anymore. I'm growing up. And so once that fear disappeared, that's when I started getting more involved. And so 2 things happened in that transitional from secondary school to college that really shaped me. Number one was my friend getting shot. So what had happened is me and my friend who'd been, you know, we'd been in school together from primary school, secondary school, been really close. And so, you know, we're in the same area, but it was almost like a civil war. So within the same area, there are guys in your area that don't really like you.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons they never liked us was because the boys I used to hang around with, although we weren't from Peckham, we used to go to Peckham a lot. And the guys that were from the area that we were in didn't like that. So they're like, "Look at you lot begging it with the Peckham boys. You think you're this, you think you're Peckham." So when we came back to our area where we were, there was this sort of civil war that we got crossfired in, we got caught in. And so I remember one day my friend says, "Look, they're there. Those boys that are always trying on us, they're over there. Let's go stab them up." So I said, "All right, cool." And so I remember I went into my mum's kitchen. 16, this is just come out of secondary school. I picked up some knives and I took 4 knives and I took 4. I saw my friend, I gave him 2 big kitchen knives and I took 2. And so I said, okay, where's this gang? And so we went down to a place called Elephant and Castle, and we saw them there. And so I remember we pulled out our knives. And again, in my mind, I'm wrestling with myself because I'm like, this is stupid, Mo. This is dumb. What are you doing? What are you doing? Whereas 2 years ago, I would never have done it. I would have just turned back home and went home. But I'm at that point now where I said, nope, I'm ready. I'm going. And so I've hyped myself up. I've hyped myself up with weed because I was smoking weed heavily at that time. I've hyped myself up on my rap music. Back then, there was a group called D Block Styles P. So I'm listening to all of that now. I'm building myself up. I've almost brainwashed myself now. Yeah. And so we get to the gang. I see me and my friend run towards them, and there's about 4 of them. And so we pull out our knives. And so as we pull out the knife to run towards them, one of them pulls out a gun. Oh. And so we're there in broad daylight with the gun facing at me and my friend, and they've pulled out the knife, and we're like, bro, what are we gonna do? And so one of the guys aims the gun at my friend, and he shoots, boom. And so I'm stood right next to my friend, and he shoots him. So, but I realized the guy that shot him, I go to the same school. I went to the same school as him in secondary school, and he always liked me. So he was always, he was always cool with me. Yeah. So it was almost a case of like, we're not bothered about you, but him, we don't like him. Because my friend, his name was Deepo. He had a big mouth, man. He'd always talk, and so they shot him.
Yeah. Gosh.
And when they shot him, again, that's when it became real to me again. I thought, wow, this is real. This isn't a game. I came out for knives, not even thinking we were going to use it, just thought we'd scare them and they would run off. And so as they shot him, they run off, and I begin to run with him. And, it just kind of escalated. He's losing blood. He's on the floor. I chucked the knife away. And then I just, by God's grace, man, I just look back and think, you know what, that could have been me. And so my friend's not even alive today. He lost his life. He got, he died. And I look at all of that now and just think, man, that could have been me. That could have been me that wouldn't have survived and wouldn't have.
Did he pass from that incident? Was it from that?
No, he never passed from that incident. He passed from another shooting incident. So he got shot again, I think at the age of 19, shot 4 times in his face. And so again, and then he lost his life at that time.
Shoot, bro. That's mad.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, so that was crazy. That affected me because it made me just think, you know what? That could have been me.
Oh,
and so, and so what it made me do is it made me intensify again that behavior, that anger, that violence inside of me. It made me say, you know what? Again, I could either be the one getting shot or I can be the one doing, again, that dilemma. The same dilemma I had in year 7, I'm facing that again, where I'm thinking, okay, I can either be the one that's going to get bullied again, or I can try and step up. So I became even mean, more aggressive. And so another incident that happened was after that, I think a few months had gone by, and we saw a guy who was part of another gang. He was on his own. And so we went over to him, we stole his phone, again, Nokia phone, 3310, we robbed it off him. That's where you made your money from, man. 3310. And so, we robbed him. But a few days later, I was in my estate, and I was on my own, just me on my own in my estate. Yeah. And as I was in my estate, I looked and I saw all these boys walking into my area with balaclavas on. And I realized and I recognized one of them. He was the guy whose phone I robbed a few days before. And he's with all of his friends and I'm on my own. So one of them comes, he's like, who's Mo? And I'm, I kind of make myself known, and he punches me in the face. And as he punches me, I try to run, but I run down a dead end, an alleyway. And so as I'm in this alleyway, these 4 boys with balaclavas start walking towards me, and they pull out knives. One of them goes behind me and he starts to stab me in my arm 3 times. And so I realized that, these men are behind me, and they're men, they're older than me. I'm 16, they're in their 21, 22-year-old. And so one of them comes behind, he's stabbing me in my arm. And so I realized, okay, if I stay here, I'm going to end up dead. So I kind of push through. And as I push through, one of them stabbed me in my back. And so I got stabbed 4 times at the age of 16. And again, that was another tipping moment in me. And it was all these little events, my friend being shot, all these little things that were happening to me where I realized, if I'm going to be about this life, I've got to step it up a notch. I've got to really believe in this a lot more.
That's madness. So obviously you're here, thank God, you survived.
Yeah.
So did you run off and then get to the hospital? Like what? Sorry, I know it's quite traumatic, but
I think what had happened is after the last stab, I fell to the floor.
Yeah.
And as I fell to the floor, I shouted and get off. And so as I'm shouting, the area that I live in is like there's flats all around you. So neighbors started opening the doors. They saw, so people are screaming, "Get off him! Get off him!" And so as the guys who stabbed me saw everyone coming, they just ran off and they went. And as they went, you know, I went to the hospital. I went to the ambulance came, took me straight away.
Yeah.
And so they said to me that the last stab was literally inches away from my spine. And they said that I was really lucky. I should have died. I should have been paralyzed at least. And it was at that point that, again, you know, I'm always negotiating with myself. You know what? Maybe this is time for you to stop this. There's another part of me, and my friends are saying, "Hey, so what are we gonna do? Are we gonna get them back? How are we gonna get them back? What are we gonna do?" Straight away, I haven't even left the hospital yet, and my friends are already talking to me.
Man.
And so at that point where I said, "You know what? Now I've got to step this up. I've got to buy weapons. You know, I've got to buy a gun. I've got to really get involved now. I can't keep sitting on the fence anymore."
Yeah.
And so because of that, my education suffered. I hardly turned up to college anymore. And, you know, I was enrolled to do law and business studies. Oh, wow. I didn't turn up at all. I didn't go to any of my sessions because it's at that point now where I'm saying, okay, you know, I can't be half-hearted with this anymore. And, you know, I've got to be proper. And so I said, you know what I've got to do is start making money. And that became the main thing from the age of 16 was, okay, how can I make money? Because the weed wasn't cutting it. You know, weed was just buying me trainers and tracksuit bottoms. It wasn't really making me enough money. So I started selling crack cocaine and heroin.
Yeah.
And that's when I'd say from that period of life, I would say that's when I really got involved. That's when I would say, okay, you know, I was certified now. I'm involved.
Yeah, no doubt. Because you can make better profit doing that. I've seen like even just like now young lads can make like $2,000 a week cashing out, no tax obviously. So it's like, well, you know, it makes you go, well, why would they go to a cruddy apprenticeship where they get like £4 an hour or whatever? Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. That became the reasoning amongst us. You know, I started watching the older guys that were making money, and the older guys, some of the guys, especially in Peckham, some of them were making 30 grand a month, like footballer money. I'm saying ridiculous kilos of crack cocaine, mad amounts of money. They were just on another level. And so I remember looking at that thinking, I want to be a lawyer, but these guys are making more money than lawyers. What's the point? You know, I might as well just go down that route. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And my plan was from the age of 16 to about 21, I'm going to do this. Then I'll get a professional job. Then I'll settle down and, you know, I'll leave all of that. And so I think there was a point, the most I was making was about £3,000 a week. I went to Southend and I went to Bournemouth. And so I was, you know, started off like they call it county lines now. So I started off a little phone there and then got some of the younger guys from my area to go into that place, and they started selling drugs for me on my behalf. And then, that's how we just started escalating from there, selling crack cocaine and heroin.
Yeah, so I want to ask you that, the crack cocaine, heroin in terms of supply and demand, because in America, like there was the war on drugs with Nixon, and like they specifically knew that African American males were doing the crack cocaine form in the suburbs of the city, and they were giving them way harsher sentencing over the powdered form, which were in, you know, further out the city where there was less African American. So, you know, I just want to ask you this for our viewers and that, like in and around London, like it's probably still the case now. Like I always wonder, like, why is it these neighborhoods? Who are the people that are able to get this stuff in and profitize from all of the runners and stuff? Like, I'm so curious. I want to know, like, why is it these parts of London? Why is it these communities? Why, you know,
I think I remember asking myself that question as well, because again, as a young teenager, I wanted to know, okay, where does this come from? Where's the top level that I can get to? And, you know, I remember having some of my friends were from a place called Bermondsey, and Bermondsey was like a predominantly white area. And so as I started hanging around with them, I started realizing that a lot of these people had professional links with how they were getting drugs into the country. And it blew my mind. Again, my friends that were black, they never necessarily had that connection that high. It was only when I started hanging around, it was one of my friends, he was a Moroccan, but he was a Moroccan guy that was like a Cockney white Englishman. He was on another level. You know, he was hilarious. So he used to take me over to Bermondsey. Bermondsy's like where Millwall Football Club and all of that's from. So he'd go there. And it was only then that I realized, okay, you know, up to now, I still don't know the full ins and out of how things get in. But I realized that there was almost like a system in place. There was almost a very sophisticated system in how large quantity of drugs could come into this country and filter their way through into the neighborhoods, into the gang areas, into the ghettos. And it opened my eyes to the reality. And the reason why it used to dawn on me is because the amount of people that you'd see getting arrested were the young black teenagers. But when I did my trail, logically, I was like, but there was always a big top white guy on the top. So how come he's always kind of filtered through to there? I remember I went to one guy. I didn't go into his house, but I was in the car with my friend, this Moroccan guy. And so he's up there. Yeah, I mean, these guys are talking kilos of crack, kilos of cocaine. And he goes in there and it's, you know, opens up the house. The man's in there with his wife and his kids, grown white man, and he's there and he's got cars outside and Porsches and everything else. And I'm sat there and I'm confused. And I'm like, hold on a minute. You know, this guy's living large. How did this trickle down? And so I don't necessarily think it was, you know, the white man on the top sat there thinking, oh, I'm just going to infiltrate the black community. I don't think that was the case at all. I think it was a case of, you know, black people in that area, that was the majority, number one. And they were just trying to make money. So whatever way they can make money, hey, this was an avenue. But the thing that was surprising is that the face of crack cocaine and heroin selling and drug dealing always seemed to be a black person, always seemed to be a black teenager or a black youth. Whereas I realized, no, actually, it wasn't just us, it's everybody. You know, everybody was at this. And the reason why that was important to understand now is because sometimes you can grow up as a black teenager and think that is your only route, because this is what the black teenagers do. This is all that we do, not realizing that's not a race issue, it's a human issue, that there were white drug dealers, black drug dealers, but because all we saw in our era were predominantly the black drug dealers, you begin to think, okay, well, that's the only route that we have. That's the only way we can go. And so, you know, and one of the things I'm really passionate about is teaching, especially young black males, that they don't have to live with this oppressed mentality that, you know, there is no other way for them to go. There is no other route for them to go. You know, and yes, we understand there are certain things that hold you back and everything else, but really and truly I try to educate them that you are the biggest person that is going to hold yourself back. Absolutely. And so I realized that okay, well, you know, I don't know where they're coming from, but it did seem very sophisticated, very intelligent. Up till now, I look at it and think, you know what, if the government really wanted to put a stop on drugs, I got a feeling they can do it. Absolutely. Because, you know, you look at how we can clamp down on terrorism. You look how we can clamp down on certain things. I'm like, listen, we're not the most sophisticated people out here. You know, if you really wanted to clamp down on this, you could end this completely. And so I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there are some questions.
You say that something that's interesting. I found some amazing data. Like one form of data I found was in Croydon, there were some young black teenagers who had been arrested. They're in the young people's prison, and the data is just astronomically, like, in the way of, like, they see the power, they see the money, they don't see any other way out, and a lot of it was linked to them in pupil referral units and easily being let go by schools. So there's all that side of it. But another part of data I found that was absolutely astronomically, like, blowing my mind was, and this is on the UK government website, that black men are 3 times more likely to be stopped for a stop and search by the police than any other ethnicity. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, because that's obviously like...
All right. So the thing is, I understand that. But I always, you know, I speak to a lot of the guys, and I always say to them, listen, if you saw 5 brothers walking towards you with balaclavas on or hoodies on over their face, what are you going to say, even as a black person? What's your natural instinct going to be? Natural instinct is going to be, those guys are going to rob me. Now, they could be on their way to football. You know what I mean? They could just be wearing whatever they're wearing. And so I think there's 2 sides. Yes, the media in the world has a responsibility on how they project black male, how they project what they show. So someone like myself that's, changed and kind of reformed and everything else, you won't see a lot of that out there. You know what I mean? You won't see a lot of, oh, wow, these are positive young black men that are doing things wrong. However, you'll see a lot of us. Someone's walking behind.
It's all right.
My wife. You'll see a lot of us who are doing the negative. And so because that's constantly portrayed, that's constantly being pushed at us, that's constantly being shown, what that does is it creates a fear in society. And you've got to remember that these police officers are normal human beings as well. So if that's what's being projected at them all the time, and they see that, they, just by wearing a uniform, they haven't all of a sudden become a robot. They still have the same natural instincts that I would have if I saw 10 boys walking into my area right now as well. So I think, number one, society has a responsibility that if we're going to project the negativity of young black male, same way, uplift the positive. So that we can see that it's not a race issue. We can say, okay, you know what? It's not just crazy black teenagers. There are good black teenagers and there are bad black teenagers. There are good white teenagers and there are bad. Whereas with the white community, I feel that I can find both sides quite easily.
Oh yeah, you
can.
Negative,
I can see it quite easily, and I can see the positive quite easily. So I'm able to distinguish and say to myself, okay, this isn't a race issue. That white person has chosen good. That white person has chosen bad. Whereas with the black community, because we don't see that much of the positive side, I think that's what creates those stereotypes. But also, it's also the black community's responsibility themselves in how they carry themselves. You got to carry yourself differently. If you want to be respected, respect doesn't just come. You've got to conduct yourself in a different way. You've got to carry yourself in a different way. Yes, that may mean you challenge certain things about your behavior that you can't just hold behind and say, well, that's who I am. That's where I'm from. And, I've said to people, listen, I see guys that I tried to mentor. I said, listen, I've been more gangster than you. I don't have to, you know what I mean? So all of this, I said, I've done more stuff than you have. But in their mind, sometimes they have this understanding that we have to stay loyal to this image that have been portrayed of us. Whereas, why not try and change that image? Why not try and show people, no, actually, I'm not always an angry black man. We're not always like that, And so as much as we want people to view us differently, we have to be willing to give them something different to see. Show them something different.
Man, and it's people like you've got that credibility to speak into their lives. So this is where it's at. So like you had this change as you're referring to, like what happened there? And then I'd love to hear about what you're doing right now with your mentoring and go for it, man. What happened?
Yeah, so I think from the age of 16 to 19, it was really a case of just, crack cocaine, heroin, making money, buying cars, going out clubbing, watching for rival gangs, protecting yourself, fighting back. And that was pretty much the cycle. But what happened was at the age of 19, one of the guys that stabbed me, we saw him. And so, this is like 2-3 years later. And so we saw him and he got attacked and he nearly died. And so when he nearly died, there was almost this big inquiry about my name with the police about attempted murder. And so, it was one of the ways I thought, what, I can get out of this is if I would leave London. And so I decided, what, I'm going to leave London. I'm just going to stay away from, that sort of area, let my name die down. So I decided to go to Derby.
Oh, yeah.
My dad helped.
Right around the corner from me, I'm in Notts. Yeah.
All right, yeah. I went to Derby University. And so I got into university on, I think it was an access course, where you don't need A-levels or anything like that. So I just kind of went to university in order to keep a low profile, keep my head down till whoever's in London passes. But then I realized, I got a little bit more respect up here as well. So I can keep going up here, but then I can sell whatever I'm selling down south. And so it was whilst I was up here in Derby that I met my girlfriend. And, we used to live together. And so as she was there, we used to talk every night about, life and, the way I'm living and the way I see life and the way she sees life. And what started happening is that voice that was dying as I was getting older, that rational voice, that conscience, should I say, that I had from primary school, secondary school, it started coming back.
Great.
You know, it's almost like, and again, it just shows you the power of words, the power of what people speak into your life. You know, if people speak death into your life, death is going to come. And, you know, you got someone that's speaking life, telling you, you know, you're better than this, you're worth more than this. And so she came from a Christian background. So she started telling me that, you know, Jesus loves you.
Oh,
God
she'd be preaching at you.
She'd be preaching, man. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it, you know. I'm like, nah, forget that. You know, I'm a Muslim, you know. So I used to tell her, even though I wasn't really practicing, I used to say, I'm a Muslim, you know, you need to come to Islam, you need to give your life to Allah and everything else. And so we used to debate all the time. And so I remember one day I'd left Derby and I'd gone down south. And I'd kind of running out of money at that time, you know, living all the time up in Derby. So I thought, you know, I'm going to go down, make some money from some crack cocaine and heroin. Then I'm just going to come back up Derby. And you know what? I think now is the time to just forget about the drugs, focus on university, and just move on. But it was at that moment when I went down, I got arrested. Wow. And when I got arrested, I got caught with a few ounces of crack cocaine and a few ounces of heroin. And so the police put me in the cell. And as they put me in the cell, they kind of mentioned to me that I'm going to be remanded in prison. I remember at that point just feeling crushed because I was so close to getting away from this crime and I'd never been to prison. All my friends had been to jail. I'd always managed to get my way out of prison. And I thought, here I am. I've got caught on that last, quote unquote, that last trip. I've been caught. And so when I was in the prison cell, all the words that my girlfriend was saying came ringing back to me. About this is why you shouldn't live this life. This is why you should give your life to God. Jesus really cares about you. And so I'm in the prison cell and I thought, you know what? I might as well give God a chance because right now, no other options working for me, you know? And again, that little boy is still there, the rationalizing, the logic. And I'm like, okay, prison, God, got nothing to lose. And so I just prayed and I said, you know what, God, if you're real, help me get out of this police station and I'll give my life to you forever. And that was it. And I remember after I prayed that, I felt like such an idiot. I thought, you know, why did I just do that for? But then instantly the police opened the door and they said, hey, you're free to go on bail. And so for me, that was like heaven. It's like, what? I thought I was getting remanded. You'd already told me the papers were signed. I'm going. They said, no, something's come up, blah, blah, blah. You're free to go on bail. And so as I left, I realized to myself, I thought, maybe Jesus did hear my prayer. Maybe God heard me, you know, maybe there is a God. So I rang the girl and I said, hey, listen, man, I need to go to church. And she was shocked. She thought, what happened to you? And I said, yeah, I need to go to church. I need to, something's just happened. I need to go to church now. He said, well, you can't go to church now. It's Friday. We've got church on Sunday we can go to. I was like, man, you know, all right, cool. Let's go. So Sunday I went to church and I remember I went in high. I just smoked a spliff and I kind of went into church high. And, you know, I always say to people, the last place you want to go high is a Pentecostal church because your head's spinning and everything else. And then you got these people clapping and singing and worshiping. I was like, oh my days, this is too much. But I remember as I was sat there in the church, I didn't kind of know what was going on. I just sat there. But then the preacher started preaching. And I remember him saying, listen, hey, it doesn't matter if you've been in prison, Jesus can save you. It doesn't matter whether you just come out of jail, Jesus can save you. It doesn't matter whether you sold drugs, Jesus can save you. And I looked at the girl and I said, you set me up, didn't you? You told him I was coming. and as he was preaching, I think, again, that voice in me started awakening, like, yeah, this is what you need to understand. And the thing that was powerful about the man that was preaching at the point is that he had lived a life of crime himself. He'd been converted and he'd been changed. And so, again, I saw a way out. And this is what I was saying, that it's very important for society, not just to show people the negative, show people the positive, so that people can then see a way out. People can see, okay, this is possible. Because all my life, until that moment, I thought it was never possible. I thought it was impossible. I thought once you're involved, there is no way out. There's no way I can ever live a successful life, a blessed life. Now it's done. When I saw that, it gave me hope.
Come on.
And so everything else that man said about Christ and how God did it, I thought, you know what? The same way as a teenager, I thought to myself, if I can follow the gang leaders, I can get to where they're getting. It was the same way I looked at this man and thought, okay, if I can follow his Jesus, I can get to where he's going. And that was it. From that moment, I prayed. I said, Christ, I want to give my life to you at the age of 19. And it was just so real because, again, I wasn't religious. I wasn't, you know, there wasn't this fairy, that clouds that came to meet me as I prayed. I felt nothing really. It was just like a prayer, but something inside of me changed.
Got you.
My mindset changed. Everything in the way I started thinking changed. I stopped smoking weed. I stopped hanging around with the wrong people. Wow. Things that I wanted to do before, but I couldn't. Now I felt empowered that I could do it. I thought, okay, I can resist this. I can. And so it completely changed my life. And, you know, for 9 months, I was in the church there, serving in the church there. The girlfriend that I told you about, she came to church. I married her, and she's my wife now.
We've been the lady walked by. That's right.
Married for 10 years. I think that was her walking in the background.
You kept that on the DL. I thought, oh, it's going to be one of those linked ones that, like me, where they planted the seed, they did the right thing, and then off they are.
Disappear. No, I kept her, man. I was like, you ain't going nowhere.
She's a very, very patient woman, I'll tell you that.
Amen,
come
amen.
on. But Carlo, do you know of him? He said something massive.
Yes.
He's so clever. He said that we've got to balance you know, all of, you know, the people focus on the negativity in BAME communities. And he said, what we have to balance is not just the suffering, but he talked about how we've got to embrace the positivity of that culture. So like having Dizzy Rascal today on Good Morning Brit or yesterday, and him actually, he did it himself. It was class. Piers Morgan started trying to spit on him. Oh, tell me what you think about Black Lives Matter. And he's like, but I'm not here to talk about it. I'm here to talk about my album and how people are going to be raving in their cars from all walks of life, no matter what their skin color is. And I'm like, come on. This point, I feel, is what a lot of white people who have been in silence feeling guilty about this emphasis that's going on right now, who 99% of them haven't got a racist bone in their body, but they're now having someone saying, right, let's spin this on this head now. Let's start showing someone thinking that whilst lives matter with the Burnley plane, and we can all play that game, as you said, with the people, the newspapers portraying the black man and having that negative vibe. Why don't we spin on his head and say, well, what's Dizzy Rascal saying? It's his 7th studio album. And I remember his best song, Boy in the Corner, was oh man. I mean, it was content, you know, today, probably not, you know, glorifying God and all that, but so I just think it's wonderful. And you know, you've had your life transformed. So, and you mentioned it right at the start of the show, or the episode. What do you actually do then for our viewers to understand, and maybe we can, you know, ramp?
Well, now I wear several hats, you know, and you know, I just want to echo what you said there about literally what Dizzy Rascal did today. I thought was fantastic. I thought that was intelligent, because again, he's trying to get pushed into a box, and again, that will portray this image of this one black person is how every black person is thinking right now, which the reality is, you know, I want to say to most people that will be listening, is that most black people are not thinking the way you think they're thinking, you know, the way the media is portraying. And so it was fantastic to see that, because I'm like, you know, I get it. I understand the racist, the anti-racist movement. I'm for it. But at the same time, you know, I have a little bit of a balance in the way I view things. So, you know, that was fantastic. And I think, again, we need to push more people up like that, so that we have different understandings of, even within the black community, we're different. Even within the black community, we think differently. And I think some people think we all think the same. And that's what Dizzy Rascal said that was fantastic. He said, I'm not the spokesperson for black people. So I'm going to share something from my point. That doesn't mean the black man that you see across the road is going to agree with that, you know, and I think that's fantastic. So what I do now is I'm a pastor of a church. So the same thing that I walked into, I realized, you know, I want to do the same for others. So I want to be that voice that is able to speak into other teenagers' lives, other young men that have maybe gone wayward, and they're looking for hope. They're looking for some sort of example that can say to them, okay, you know what, I know where you're at, but I know where you can be. And so that was my passion. I said, you know, I want to be that. I want to do that for the rest of my life. And so that's what I do now. I'm a pastor, and, you know, and my aim is for that. It's for the quote unquote marginalized people of society. you know, no matter who you are, black, white, Asian, to me, I'm not a specific black worker. I'm not just for black teenagers. I'm for everyone. In fact, that's the reason I moved to Hull. And because I thought, you know, I'm not going to just fit myself in a box. I'm not a black youth worker. I'm here to reach anyone and anyone. Whoever wants change, whoever wants hope, I'm here for them. And so what began to happen is, as I was pastoring the church, just things started happening to the point where we started seeing, you know, what was happening in London with the increase of knife crime again. And so I thought, okay, what can we do to challenge that perception of carrying a knife? And there was a campaign already being run here called No More Knives. And so I just kind of jumped on the back of that. And yeah, it just exploded. You know, we started going into schools all over Hull, all over Yorkshire. And, you know, although we went in under the banner of knife crime, we did a lot more than just talk about knife crime, because a lot of people up north were like, well, why are you talking about knife crime? There's not really an issue of knife crime. But I used to say to them, that's not what we do. It's not really tackling knife. And I pushed the same message of choices and consequences. So teaching young people about the reality of their choices and the consequences, using my example of knife crime to educate them on that. And so it's just fantastic. I enjoy it. I love it. And also I think it helps in this community. It's really helped people to realize, again, you know, in Hull, a lot of people's perception of black people, for example, is through what they see on the media, because there's not a lot of black people up there. Yeah, there's not a lot. So I feel like it's almost my responsibility to paint a picture, the other side of the story, to show people, okay, you know what? No, there are positive people that are out here. There are, you know, different people that are changing. That the reality is race isn't an issue. The real issue that the world doesn't want to talk about is sin is an issue. It's rebellion in man's heart. That is the real issue you go to any country. I've traveled all over the world to different places, and I've seen the same traits, no matter if the person's black, white, brown, everything. It's sin, it's within. But that's one conversation that the world doesn't want to have.
The elephant
and
in the room.
Until they have that conversation, they're going to keep going around in circles. They're going to keep like headless chickens, just going to keep running around. What's the problem? How do we solve it? Do we do more youth clubs? All right, keep doing that until you acknowledge that there's something within human heart that needs to change. And so yeah, that's my message. That's literally what I'm sharing. That's what I'm preaching, and that's what I believe in.
That's class. And people will be watching this and going, oh, Rory's brought on the God School again. Yes, I have. I have, and I mix them up. I have people from all walks of life and all colours, creeds and religions. But you know, and a lot of people who do watch in Light in the Shadows, you know that I am a man of God. I'm a Christian. And that's how I roll. And, you know, there's a particular verse in the Bible that says in Romans 1:16, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. And, you know, just like as a Leeds fan, he won't like to hear that. Maybe we don't like that whole. But as a Leeds fan, I'm not ashamed either. Like it's the same principles. You can't be ashamed of the virtues and the characteristics and nature of your life. And, you know, and that's something that I want to shout from the rooftops here and Light in the Shadows to all our viewers today.
And I think what it is, again, is a lot of people have a misconception of what Christianity is as well. You know, one of the things I've enjoyed about our church is a lot of the members are raw conversions. So they're not people from religious backgrounds.
You are sheep snatching. That's what they call it.
Nah, I'm not into that. I hate that. I hate all of that stuff. They give you more problem than anything else. I'm not into none of that stuff. You know, I get people, I come from this church, can I attend yours? I'm like, you're just best off staying wherever you are. I'm more interested in talking to people who are not from a religious background. Because I think a lot of those people actually are interested in God, but they're not quite sure about the way he's being presented, the God that they're seeing. And so, you know, someone like myself, I like to just show people that the reality of God, that, you know, instead of saying, oh, this person, whoever's up there in the sky or the universe, you acknowledge there is a God. But let me explain to you who that God is, what that God is about.
That's so good. You know, we want to say to the viewers today, like, we invite you to ask these questions. Like Mo did it when he had a bifter and he was high. I was at uni in America on the soccer scholarship, and I went out in Charlotte, North Carolina, tipsy on alcohol, got back, and this presence pushed me to the flat next door, who the guy's a Christian, and I wanted more, but I was so prideful and embarrassed to go that next step. But it took me to be, you know, and I'm not condoning it, saying, oh yeah, get smashed up on drugs and alcohol to get to God.
That is not
that is not in the Bible. But what we are saying is that we had those questions, and it, you know, even in our darkest times in the shadows, like God put light on them and showed us his love is equal for us all. So, you know, we say that today. We're not going to go up and do an altar call right now and tell you, oh, you got Christ. But we want to say to the viewers, we love you and we're so glad and blessed that we tuned in. But Mo's life is a miracle that he's here. He sat having this chat with me, and the man got stabbed up. You know, he got in trouble with the police and he was let off. He had grace. This is what Christians call grace. And man's leading a church and running this charity work, and it's just an inspiration. So we say to you today, like, just ask questions. And you know, if you're watching this, you know me personally, just inbox me, text me. I relish on these kind of things. And questions are a good thing. Always ask God questions. He's not intimidated by them. He loves them and enjoys them. So yeah, we want to say
uncomfortable questions as well. I tell people that all the time. I say, listen, ask me anything. Ask me, why did God do this and why? I love it. Bring it. You know, and I think again, this is why we have such a big division in the UK. Is people are afraid to talk. People are afraid to ask questions, and so because they're afraid to ask questions, they come up with their own answers. They begin to, you know, assume what they, and it's just ask. You know, so someone's asking me questions about what I thought about and the black community or the white, just ask, it's fine. You know, not a problem. How do you understand someone else without asking questions? You have to ask them. So I think, you know, if anybody has any questions on God, on race or whatever, just ask. You know, there are times that you just got to ask questions so that you can gain understanding. And the more understanding you get, the more unity can be created.
That's blessed. You know, and we can embrace diversity as well. And you know, I say to people, like, I'm still learning. I'm still asking questions. This is why I started in Light in the Shadows. It's dialogue, but it's predominantly more of a monologue. So people like Mo can share all their amazing experience to enlighten you guys and help you and make it feel like, you know, you can pick your life up. You can improve your mindfulness and your mindsets and mental health. But keep asking questions in life. That's how we develop and further ourselves as human beings and make this world a better place. And long may it continue in Light in the Shadows. This is about providing media so that we're having a sensible conversation, that even if we disagree, like I have people on my show who have different beliefs to me, and that's what it's about, you know. So yeah, man, Mo, it's been class today, brother.
No problem.
Oh, buzzing. It's been mint. And just for the viewers as well, I have some guests that I know inside out. Like last week, Martin and I was on the election campaign together, but Mo's like, we've only had a couple of emails back and forth bouncing, but it's been popping. And you know, I'm not, maybe it might be presumptuous, but I want to come see you. I want to come visit your church, not to join it. Absolutely. You're not sheep snatching me.
No,
my heart's for knots, mate. But no, man, I want to come visit you. I'll let you know.
When we open up, I think we're hearing, because of lockdown, things are opening up.
Yes, mate.
So.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very first class. But yeah, thank you, Mo, so much. And guys, we just love you on the show. We thank you for tuning in. I want to say to all of the people who know me personally, I really appreciate your support and sharing my videos, particularly on Facebook. We've got Twitter as well and Instagram. So coming up on the screen right now, we've got the handle. It's Enlighten the SH1. So just click on them and follow us and share this content. Because as I say every week, and it will never get old, the more of these kind of platforms that are up, the more people that we can reach. And, you know, we've got so many other people that do similar stuff for men and their mental health. But it's so important that you guys can just share it and subscribe to my YouTube channel as it's coming up on the screen right now. So, yeah, thank you so much, guys. And really appreciate you. This was episode 6 with Mo Timbo. And we want to say thank you so much and come back for episode 7 next week. We have a clinical psychologist, Dr. Theora. She's a world-class psychologist out in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, in Dubai, that she practices, and she's going to be talking about suicide. So I'm so excited. And she's a female, my first female guest, and I'm glad, because sometimes women, they can just know us better than we know ourselves. So if people are thinking, oh, why aren't a bloke? That's why. All right. So thank you, guys. God bless, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Thank you.